Okay, welcome back. We're looking at 1 Samuel chapter 16. We finished steps 1 through 5 yesterday, and today we're going to go through steps 6 through 9. You ready?
Well, I know what I did isn't right, but I couldn't come to class with nothing.
Oh, you know what you did isn't right. Okay, well, we'll see. We'll see, okay? So, step 6, the focusing questions. How is the crisis facing the main character seen in our lives? Okay, this is a little tougher with this story, but let's see. Okay, the crisis facing the main characters, how is that seen in our lives?
The government might be going through a rough time, like maybe the presidential election time where none of the candidates look good.
Okay. Okay. How about we broaden it just a little bit? This was a crisis for Samuel and the people of Israel looking for a national leader, right? But we face that same situation just looking for leaders, right? So that can be a leader for a church, like a pastor. That can be a leader for a CE, for a company, things like that, right? Okay. It doesn't have to be national leadership. Okay. So the crisis of a story often creates a theological test. The main character must trust or obey God in some way. What's the theological test of the story?
I'm switching gears here, and that's why I'm pretty sure it's not right.
Okay.
Will Samuel look at Eliab's heart instead of his appearance?
Okay, you're focusing on Eliab. You're close. You've got the main character, Samuel. Yes. Okay. But you're focusing on Eliab. Don't focus on Eliab and work with the rest of it. Let's come back. What is the crisis? The crisis is Israel needs a new leader, needs a king, right? And Samuel is sent to anoint the next king, right? Now, in the crisis is who will be the next king? That's the question of the crisis. Samuel has to trust God. What's he trusting? What does he have to trust God in?
That God knows best who the next king will be?
That God knows best. And what does God look at?
The heart?
The heart. Okay? So Samuel has to trust that outward appearance is not as important as what goes on in the heart. And that the heart is more important. Okay?
Okay.
Okay. So, state it as a question. How would you state that as a question?
Will Samuel trust God that a person's heart is more important than his appearance?
Okay. And in this case, why was Samuel looking at Eliab's appearance? Did he just want a handsome king, or what was he looking for?
A leader?
A leader. Someone who was tall and commanding presence. So we can broaden that to say qualifications. Okay? So Samuel was looking at qualifications that he could see, and God was measuring by inner character, right? Okay, so how would you state it as a question?
Will Samuel trust God that the heart is more important than other qualifications?
Just like that, yeah. I know, we just covered that question. Okay. So how is this theological test often seen in our lives today?
If we're looking for somebody to do something, like to...
A leadership position.
Well, yeah.
Okay.
We need to maybe trust God to show us their heart instead of look at other qualifications.
Or another way to put it is, maybe a better way to put it is, when looking for a leader, God places more emphasis on character than other qualifications, and we should too. Okay? Now, we've been talking about leader in general, and it does apply to a leader in general, but we can also narrow it down further to this was going to be a leader of God's people. Today, who are the leaders of God's people?
Pastors.
Pastors primarily. Okay? So, what does this passage show us about human nature?
Samuel's first instinct was to look at Eliab's appearance and height.
Appearance, height, outward qualifications. Yes. Okay? How smart is a person? What's their educational background? What is their, everything that you can put down on a resume. Okay, you may not have encountered resumes yet. When people apply for a job, they write up a resume of all their experience and education and all that sort of stuff and turn it in. People read that resume and say, okay, this guy, he went to this very good university here, check. He got his degree in this area, check. He has experience in this area and this area and this area, check, check, check. Aha, he looks like a good candidate. Okay? And that's how often pastoral searches are done too. He went to this seminary, check. He has his degree in this, check. He has this much experience, check. Oh, he looks like a good candidate. Okay. What's God looking at?
His heart.
His heart. Okay. And there's a way to check that as well. And that's often checked in pastoral searches. Okay, but that's what it often happens, that we tend to look at the outward appearance and God looks on the heart. Okay, what does this passage show us about God?
God looked at Eliab's heart.
Mm-hmm. More than that? You don't think he looked at David's heart? I said you're focusing on Eliab. It's not just Eliab. Okay? God also rejected all 7 brothers of David. Right? He rejected everybody else in Israel and chose David. Okay? So how can we broaden that? God
looks at people's hearts.
God looks at people's hearts. We can even broaden that further and say God knows all about people. Not just their actions and what they do, but he sees what they are like, their heart, their character. Okay?
I was kind of wondering, how do you broaden all people?
Well, you broaden it to not just looking at their heart, but looking at their character, and that God sees everything. How is the story shaped by the Mosaic covenant?
I don't know.
Okay. Again, this is a very important question. Notice that God is choosing a leader for his people, and that leader is going to be a king, right? That's because Israel was a theocracy. That means it was ruled by God, and the king was supposed to be God's under-shepherd over the country. He was political and spiritual leader. Okay? That's the way God set it up with the law. That the king was supposed to be a political and spiritual leader. He was supposed to follow God. But his primary role was ruling over the country, following God. Now, that brings us to, how does the new covenant affect the ideas in this story?
I don't know.
Okay, stop and think a minute. Are we the nation of Israel? No. We are not God's covenant people, a nation of God's covenant people. We aren't. Okay? America is not a nation of God's covenant people. Right? There is no nation on earth other than Israel that is God's covenant people. Right? Okay? So when we come to the new covenant, God's people are focused where or how? Not as a political nation, but as
A church?
as church, as a body of believers. Don't be thinking of the building, thinking of the body of believers, okay? And so the body of believers needs leaders that will follow God, okay? You see how we need to think through this carefully? We need to understand how the Mosaic covenant and the new covenant affect this. If you just took this straight over to today, you would say, whenever we choose a king, we need to choose one that God selects by looking on his heart. And then we go, well, we don't have a king. Okay, it doesn't apply to us. Or we can say, well, maybe we should do this when applying to a president. Now, that would be good. But we have to remember that America is not the kingdom of Israel. America is not God's chosen nation. Yes, America was founded on Christian principles, and God has had his hand of blessing upon America for years. But America is not God's chosen nation. Okay? So, we have to remember that when we come to the new covenant, God's focus is on the church. That's the people of God. It's the church, not Israel. Okay, so what was the writer's purpose for writing this story?
To show the people of Israel that appearances don't count for everything?
Yes. What else?
Outward qualifications
Mm-hmm.
don't count for everything.
But what does?
The heart.
Okay, you're focusing on Eliab. Let's get to David, okay?
I told you I knew it wasn't right.
It's not that it's wrong, it's that it's incomplete. Okay?
Okay.
You're not wrong, it's just not complete. That's all. Okay, what results did the writer hope to see?
That the people of Israel would try to judge people by their heart.
How about they value the hidden character of the heart more than the outward show of qualifications? Now that has a lot of application in many, many ways. Right here, the application is when choosing leaders, choose one that is devoted to God and has the heart devoted to God. Okay? But that principle has a lot of applications. Okay, so let's move on. Let's identify the ECI. What do you have?
Samuel's first instinct was to look at Eliab's appearance, but God looked at his heart.
And what am I going to say?
I'm focusing on Eliab.
Yes, okay, so can you try adjusting it?
Samuel's first instinct was to look at Eliab's heart, but God looked at to look at Eliab's appearance, but God looked at Jesse's son's heart.
Okay, that's kind of complicated. Let's try to simplify it there. But you're right. You're talking about Samuel. That's good. Okay? We could say something like, Samuel was impressed with outward appearance, but God was impressed with the heart. Okay? Or Samuel valued outward appearance, but God valued the heart. Maybe that's a better way to say it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? We could work with that some more. We could try rearranging it to something like Samuel learned that inner character is more important to God than outward appearance. We can say that way. We could also say that Samuel was distracted by outward qualifications while God was focused on the heart. Many different ways of saying it. Okay? Why don't you choose one that you'd like to work with, that you think captures it well?
Probably Samuel valued outward appearance, but God valued what was in the heart.
Okay. Samuel valued outward appearance or outward qualifications, but God valued what was in the heart. Okay, good. So let's turn that into a TCI.
Humans value outward appearance, but God values what's in the heart more.
Okay. Let's remember the thing about a TCI is that it should be true for all believers everywhere, or all people everywhere. Okay. Do humans always value outward appearance?
Mm-mm.
No. So how can we modify that just a little bit? We can throw in a little word, often. Okay?
I was thinking most, but then that wouldn't be
Most.
true for all believers.
Okay. So how would we say it?
Often humans value outward appearances or outward qualifications, but God values what's in the heart.
Good. Okay. So then let's move on to the LCI. How would we state the LCI?
Often we value outward appearances, but God values what's in the heart.
Okay. Often we value external qualifications, but God values what's in the heart. Okay. Now, what you want to do with an LCI is you want it to have a little bit of oomph, a little bit of punch. What you've given me is a statement of fact, and everybody listening is going to go, yep, that's true. Often people look at outward qualifications, and the Lord looks at the heart. Yep, very true. Amen. Preach it. But there's no action point. There's nothing that they have to do to change. There's nothing that it's not personal for them. Everyone can be thinking about, yep, we often do this. But there's no call for them to change anything. One way you could say it would be, learn to value inner character over external qualifications. That's one way to say it. Or you can just say, value internal character instead of external qualifications, or over external qualifications.
How do you always come up with all these ideas and I can't hardly think of one?
Practice. I've been doing this for years. You're just learning. Don't feel bad. Okay? I've been doing this for many, many years. And there's a lot of preachers out there who have been doing it even longer than I have, who are even more creative and better than I am. It's just a matter of practice. So you'll get better as you keep practicing. Okay?
Okay.
So, you want to choose one of those LCIs?
I don't remember all of them.
Okay, I said, learn to value internal character over external qualifications. Or value internal character over external qualifications. There's not much difference between those two.
Yeah. How about the learn to one?
Okay. And if we gave ourselves more time and really thought about it, we could probably come up with something even better than that. But that's a workable one. Okay. So let's go to step 9, connect. Okay. You're going to be teaching this lesson to Daniel and Hannah. So, how do Daniel and Hannah face situations with the same theological test? Right off the bat, you go, they don't face this, do they? Because they're not choosing any leaders. They're kids. They don't choose their mom and dad. They don't choose their Sunday school teacher. They don't choose the pastor. They don't choose anybody, right? Right. But we can broaden it. Like I said, this principle has a lot of application. So, when we boil it down, the choice before Samuel was, would he value internal character over external qualifications or talent or abilities? Does that help you? Think of how this might apply to Daniel and Hannah and how they might face a similar theological test.
If they're trying to choose friends or something, they might.
Okay. You're still focusing on the choosing, which is fine. But let's come back to the value. Learn to value internal character. This has a lot of application for kids.
They should value the condition of their own heart more than their outward appearances.
Good job. That's the one I was going to go for. Yes. And not just outward appearances, but their talents and their abilities. What should they really focus on? Yes, develop your outward talents and abilities, but what's more important is the inner character. Okay, in your heart. Good. Okay, so what sort of situations would they face in that? Okay, how about this example? They are tempted to lie about something to make themselves look good, and so everybody will like them, instead of telling the truth. What are they focusing on? What everybody else thinks about them and not what is right in their character. That's one. Another example would be for kids in school, copying on a test so that they get good grades, which is external, instead of the character of saying, I'm not going to cheat. Okay? Those are situations where personally we are faced with that. And does that come out in the passage? Well, yeah, because David was a young man. But already he had shown that he had character that God liked. So how is the human nature of the story seen in your group? Okay, how about this? For girls, putting more emphasis on how pretty they are, and their pretty dresses, and how lovely everything is, and making everyone look nice, and taking pictures, and for guys, how strong they are, in their athletic ability, or whatever else, focusing on those things, and not on growing as a godly person. Okay? That would be human nature. How does the unchanging nature of God that is seen in the story help your group, help Daniel and Hannah with the human nature of the passage? What's the unchanging nature of God?
That he values the heart.
Mm-hmm.
He could help them see that what's in their heart is more important.
Okay, he could help them see, but you could also help them see. No, in the story, the unchanging nature of God is that He looks on the heart. That's what he cares about. That's what he values. So, if you're really concerned about pleasing God, what are you going to value?
The heart.
The heart. Yeah. So, as you think about the purpose of the story, what did we say the purpose of the story was?
To show the people of Israel that what's in the heart is more important than appearances.
Right, to show the people of Israel that what's in the heart is more important than appearances. Okay, so as you think about that purpose, what will be your purpose for your lesson?
To show Daniel and Hannah that the what's in the heart is more important than outward appearances.
Yeah. And so as you think of the result which the writer wanted to see, what result will you wish to see from your lesson?
That Daniel and Hannah would value what's in their hearts more than outward qualifications.
Exactly. Good. Okay. For our next lesson, work through steps 10 through 14. Prepare a lesson. Steps 10 through 14. Okay?
Okay.
All right. Good.